So, okay, who subscribes to my Substack? One over there. Okay, so we got, oh, all right. So that's just a QR code for my Substack to give you a quick sense of what it is. First of all, it's free. Second of all, you know, it's about a weekly, sometimes every week and a half newsletter where I just talk about my history in comics. It's really a catch-all for everything. I talk about my history in comics, tell some behind-the-scenes stories, tell you how the sausage is made, was made, will be made, and some tutorials, some, you know, advice from my point of view if you're looking to break into comics, or just, you know, if you're a creator in any way, shape, or form, how to keep your sanity. And it's pretty lighthearted and hopefully a breezy read. But if you're interested, just, you know, scan the code and sign up for free, and you know, you just punch in your information, and that's it. And also, it'll be a catch-all for any sort of new announcements I have coming up. And there will be new announcements probably near the end of this year, sometime in late fall into winter, and especially next year there'll be some big announcements. So next year, if I'm here, or any show, it won't just be this, it'll be slides of stuff that we do. So, so essentially, you know, this panel is really not unlike the panel I had earlier this week, which is just essentially your time to ask any questions, anything you might be wondering about in terms of comics, or my career, or Marvel, or DC, or the industry in general. Clearly, fashion advice, right? You know. So really, this time is yours, and it's only as much fun as you guys want it to be. So, who's gonna be the? Oh, you got your hand up. I love it, man. All right, go, man, go.
Hi, my name is Bruno. I'm doing a PhD on superhero comic book
Superhero comic book
covers.
Covers.
And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about your role as editor and editor-in-chief regarding that. What sort of things, what sort of process you guys used to go through?
Yeah.
Marvel, I mean, used to go through whenever you're asking for a cover. Is this something you discuss with the writer or the artist itself? Is the how used to be back in the day and nowadays?
That's a great question. Because, you know, I was just recently reading some old Stan Lee soapboxes, right? Because they're filled with wonderful information. I used to read them as a kid, right? And they're filled with wonderful information, especially historically, right? It puts things in perspective. When I started in 2000 as editor-in-chief, myself and Bill Jemis, our publisher, CEO, we felt that our covers needed to stand out more on the racks, and that they were getting too busy. And in a lot of cases, you know, story covers were sort of thematically what was going on, right? And now, if you look back at some of the books in the 60s and 70s, right, they were, you know, they showed they showed a scene from inside the comic book and had tons of blurbs, like everything changes here, right? And guest starring, blah blah, and arrows and all that kind of stuff. I love that shit. I really do. And it was great for the newsstand. But now, as we started to get into a different world, right, of the direct market, and incredible cover designers who were coming in, painters, and just people who specialized in it, we had to really, I'm sorry, this happened last panel. Nobody texted me since I've been here, and then suddenly it starts. We started to look for more iconic covers. Not necessarily a cover that didn't reflect what was in the story, but covers that really caught the eye first. A lot of that would also sort of dictated that we use less cover copy. So you'll notice that there was probably a year or two there where covers were, you know, sometimes single characters, sometimes characters posed. We were just trying to grab the reader's eye with something that was designy, iconic, had an incredible silhouette, and that could be done, again, with shapes, with colors, even logo treatment, right? So we got away from the story stuff. And it's funny because I was reading one of Stan's soapboxes where Stan was talking to the fans, and he said, you know, you guys have been complaining about our covers having too much stuff on them, too much text, too much this, too much that. So we've decided to go to these iconic covers. I didn't realize, I'm reading this for the first time going, wow, okay, what's old is new, right? And so we go into all these iconic covers, and more like magazine covers, and now you guys are complaining that you don't have the story covers with this, that, and the other thing, right? So we're going a little back to that, right? And I just kept, I read these things, and I'm like, man, what is old is new, like things just don't change, right? You're never gonna please everybody, but we realized that we had a tremendous amount of success doing those kinds of covers. This did not mean that we wouldn't do storytelling covers, but it's just that for the most part, we wanted to get the iconography out there and really have the cover stand out. I used to call, at Marvel, I suspect they still do, after COVID, who knows what's going on, right? But they have we had a cover wall, right? Which essentially was a wall with plastic pockets where all the covers that were on sale for that month, or going to be on sale for that month, were all on the wall. And I remember one time when we felt our covers weren't very, very strong. I encouraged all our editors to gather around the wall and squint their eyes and tell me what pops to them, right? And generally the stuff that would pop to them would be the most simplistic covers. I'm like, look, this is what fans see when they walk into a retailer. Times DC, times Image, times, right? So I call it the big pizza pie with everything on it, right? Can you identify a single ingredient? If you can, that's a good cover. So you want to be that single ingredient that stands out in that pizza pie. It's what I do when I design my covers. I try to come up with something that at least will pop or compete to pop. I don't always succeed, but I have my own philosophy about how I create covers. But that was really it. We had a concerted effort to try to modernize our design in order to try to stand out. Because the cover is really the first thing. If you walk into a comic shop and you have your habitual books that you buy, right? So you're going to pick those up. Our goal is, we want you to buy those, but we want you to maybe consider, if you have a little extra disposable cash, consider buying something new. Okay, that's going to catch your eye. You'll pick it up. You may not buy it. Picking it up is like, you're 50% there, right? I remember when I got reintroduced to comics, I went to a comic shop because a buddy of mine said, you need to pick up Dark Knight Returns. And I was broke. And I walked into the comic shop, and this is 1980, whatever, right? And again, to show you how things never change, I'm like, wow, comics are expensive, man. And so I had enough money to buy one other comic. And this one book, design-wise, caught my eye, and I picked it up. I didn't read it. I said, this is a cool cover. And I brought it home, and it was a second issue of Watchmen, right? So that design, and that was a logo treatment. It was just very, very different, right? So, I just speaking of personal experience, there's something to that methodology, I think, clearly, right? And that's why great covers stand out. That's why great cover artists get paid top dollar to do covers, even if they're not doing the interiors, because it helps move units at the end of the day. It's, everybody's in the business to sell comics. So, thank you. That's a great question. Yes, sir.
I listened to a podcast, Rob's Nation, about Rob Liefeld.
Uh-huh.
Do you think you're gonna ever do any podcasts?
Yeah, eventually I will. Eventually, I'm slowly getting to the point where I'm going to be building some YouTube content. I'm just struggling a little bit with it because I haven't listened to Rob's podcast, but Rob is super energetic, so I'm sure it's great, right? But also, I'm not so. It'd be very easy for me to do podcasts and throw shade and say I hate this. It's just it's not who I am, and I don't want to do something that is just your standard tutorials of here's how you do a face, here's how you draw the hand. Because there's thousands of people doing that on YouTube who do it much better. They can teach it much better than I can. So I'm trying to find exactly what my niche is, but I'm getting there. And when I'll build up the content slowly, and it'll be an offshoot of this. It'll be a channel of drawing the line somewhere, which is again, it's gonna be my catch-all for everything. know. So if you subscribe, you'll eventually hear about it. But thanks, man. By the way, what do you like about Rob's?
He does a lot of stuff about pop culture.
Uh-huh.
He talks about the 90s,
Yeah.
English comics,
That's cool.
all that stuff. So he brings all sorts of stuff. He talks about different art creators anyway.
Yeah.
Art Adams, stuff like that.
Awesome. Cool. I gotta check it out. So thanks,
He
man.
talks about you too, but
Ooh.
good stuff. All good.
Okay. It's fine. Thank you, man. Appreciate it. Yes, sir.
Being like Marvel during the Disney acquisition, is that exciting? Like for you personally, is that exciting? Was it scary? Was it a little bit of both? What was that like?
Oh no, it was super exciting, and you know the funny thing is that we had, you know, Marvel had sent out an exploratory committee to meet with Bob Iger before anything was consummated. We went out there twice. It was myself and 5 other people, 6 other people maybe. So we kind of knew it was going to happen, and you know, the exploratory committee came back and said, this looks like a tremendous opportunity for us. You know, money aside, it's just it's going to open doors for us because, you know, while we're starting to make inroads with our movies, Disney's going to give us a tremendous amount of marketing muscle that we just, you know, would never have had on our own. So, so we came back, yeah, you know, we should be doing this. So it's actually here in Toronto. Was it 2006? 2006, I think is when it happened. And I'm on the convention floor, and I get a call from our chief counsel saying, Joe, the deal's going down. I'm like, great, fantastic. We need you to sign a contract. I'm like, what? We need you to sign a contract down. I'm like, what's going on? Well, I totally spaced. I didn't realize that, you know, I actually was smart enough to think ahead that in my contract I had a stipulation that said that if Marvel were ever to change ownership hands, that I could just tip out and go, right? So they need you to sign that you're not going to leave and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, I'll do what no, you got to do it now. So me and my wife are running around looking for, you know, calling my lawyer, trying to get this thing printed. It was crazy. So I signed that contract here in Toronto, and then it went out, and so that was a weekend. And then on the Monday, the deal was announced. You know, so but we were really, really excited, and you know, ultimately it worked out really, really great. So cool. Yes, sir.
Hi. Kind of a related question. I just started talking comics a couple months ago, so I'm very new to this.
Oh, cool. Welcome.
Thank you. And, you know, and I also work in the film industry. And I've noticed that a lot of people are talking about how all of these superhero movies are bombing at the box office. We're not doing enough of them, which is affecting, you know, the comic industry as well. My question is, a lot of people are talking about superhero fatigue in film. What are your thoughts on that, and if you have any, and if you see any trends coming up in the next few years that might speak to that or counter that?
Right. Well, here's the thing. You know, let's start with the idea that superhero movies are bombing and affecting comics. Okay, they're not affecting comics. Really, I mean, I keep hearing this trope. And this is not just now, this is not just this week, this is not just last year, this is not just 3 years ago. This has been in my entire history in comics, right? My 30 years in comics, I've been hearing nothing but comic shit down, comic shit down, comic shit down. I've never been in an industry that is that's more thrilled to predict its own demise than comics. And I think a lot of that stems back history. What was that?
The film industry likes to predict its own demise.
Yeah, but not like comics. I mean, here's the thing: the film industry starts really. You know, I've worked in every single. You name an industry, I've been there, right? In Timber. The film industry, when things are going great, there's no end to the gravy train, right? It's like, yeah, we're just printing money. It's gonna, and they forget that everything is cyclical, right? And it's gonna come down again. In comic books, we could be doing gangbuster business, And there's always people looking around going, when's the next shoe gonna drop? When is it gonna all be over, right? So the minute there were a few movies that were hits, everybody in the comments was like, well, this isn't gonna last, right? So things are cyclical. But in terms of comic books, right, I keep hearing people out there, the big difference between when I broke in and today is that there's always people saying, oh, industry's dying, right? It's usually people that can't get into the industry or have been sort of, just can't get work in the industry anymore, that like to say that. The difference today is that there's people that are making money saying that, right? They have YouTube channels that are every single day are about the death of comics. And I'm like, guys, you know, at least a lot of like these doomsday cults give you a date. They give you a date when it's gonna end. Give me a date, because this has been going on for decades now, right? So in terms of comics are healthy, right? And like any business, they have ups and they have downs. They have boom years, they have slower years. But the thing that's great now is that there's a stable base where the business is just making money. Sometimes more, sometimes less, right? In terms of the movies, I can't speak to superhero fatigue per se. There have been some movies that have, I mean, look, even the Marvel movies that people say have bombed still make money, right? They've made money. You know, maybe there's one or two that broke even, but at the end of the day, it's just they look at it and they grade it on the curve of the incredible success, right? The unimaginable success that some of those Avengers movies have, right? So, but any studio would give, you know, their left and right arms to have even the what would be considered a moderate Marvel success, right? So, you know, and yes, there have been some movies out there that have not been good, right? And again, but I think the bigger problem within the superhero genre, or just in that sort of classic intellectual property genre, is that it's closing. It's forcing studios, or it's making studios believe that the only way to make money is by having an established 60, 70, 80-year-old IP, right? Because it's less risk involved. You get to spend $100 million. You want to make sure it's on something that's kind of iconic, right? So I think there's less risk going on in Hollywood right now. And I think writers are feeling that. I think producers are feeling that. Like that era where somebody would just take a flyer and say, this sounds like a really great idea, let's just do it, but nobody knows what it is. That's fine, let's just try. I think movies have become so expensive that the risk has to be minimal. So studios lean into things like a Marvel movie, a Barbie, right? You know, these are established brands. So I think on that level, it's frustrating creatively. Again, I have a lot of friends, you know, who are writers and producers in Hollywood, and they feel it, right? They feel like if you can't come in with an established IP, it's a really hard sell. The days of pitching in a room to a studio head and saying, I got this great idea, are just don't happen anymore. You know, hopefully it'll shift. Hopefully it will shift. But right, again, I don't know if necessarily it's superhero fatigue or if it's that the audience is looking for something a little bit different, you know, down the road. I honestly couldn't tell you. I think it's too soon to tell, right? And the other thing is, like, in terms of Marvel, you know, they've been making movies with some of the lesser known characters, right? If they get back to doing Iron Man, that'll really be the test, right? When they get back to doing one of the iconic characters, to see what happens. It'll be interesting to see also what happens like with Superman DC, right? You know, I think James Gunn is a brilliant creator. It'd be really interesting to see what he does with Superman. If that takes off, then suddenly like, oh, there's no superhero fatigue, right? They just, you know, here it is. So, again, too soon to tell. Back. Let's see, you had the person in front of you. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a social worker, and
Sorry, what?
I'm a social worker as my career, and a lot of clients I work with, they might have trouble with reading and literacy and stuff. Do you recommend any material or how they can break into maybe even comics as a kind of ways to help them learn, you know,
You know,
Strong struggle.
I do recommend comics as a reading tool. You know, my daughter had a learning disability in school, right? And it wasn't discovered until she was in middle school.
I have dyslexia, so yeah.
Yeah. So you know, my wife had it, my daughter had it, and in middle school she fell through the cracks. So we actually, for high school, much to her chagrin, although she ended up loving it, we put her into a high school that really specialized in taking extra care with kids that had trouble reading, right? And so she would have to show up at school like 2 hours early and stay 2 hours later. And, you know, so reading came slower to her, but her cognitive reading was much higher because she took her time. And now she reads books like crazy. But comics were there for her, you know, and she really enjoyed the you know, the sort of the skill set of reading comics, right? Because it's not just like reading a book, right? Because you have to know where the balloons are going, you know. So it takes a little bit of work, but I do think that strengthened her ability to you know, read text, read novels, and all that sort of stuff. So I mean, the only thing I can tell you is that I think they're a great tool, you know, and they're also just an amazing tool for expanding imaginations, because that's what did it for me. You know, reading Stan Lee and, you know, Jack Kirby's stuff. You know, I was thinking crazy shit when I was a kid, right? Because it was just like, it was all there, man. You know, it's just it's unlimited in that sense. You know, so gentleman front.
Yeah, so this is more a statement than a question, but if you want to talk about it, that's great. I would like to thank you for taking smoking out of comic books. That was you know, a big deal that you made. And I think when you read old comic books and new comic books, that's like the thing that immediately stands out. And I think a lot of media followed your lead after that. So I just want to thank you for that.
I mean, I can't say that other media followed. I can't take credit for that, but you know, it was a personal thing for me. You know, I lost both my grandfather and my father ultimately to smoking. But smoking, and look, if you look at some of my earlier comics, you know, I used it as a prop as well, only because it makes for some great design elements and stuff. And then eventually I was just like, well, you know, well, when I got tomorrow, I'm like, why are we doing this? And I mean, I couldn't help but laugh at it, which was, you know, we took Wolverine's cigar away, and we took Nick Fury's cigar away, and I caught hell from people. How could you do that? That's what, you know. It's okay. You know, today a generation of readers has no clue, nor do they care for these characters. It doesn't make the character. And it's funny. I was reading. Actually, I was listening to a podcast about some old Hollywood stuff, and they were talking about Humphrey Bogart. And you know, he had like I wish I remember what movie it was, but he had a big monologue, right, in this one movie. Oh, that's right. He was saying they're like, what can we do to make this monologue interesting? He's like, put a camel in the back, right? And if we're lucky, hopefully the camel's humping somebody, right, or something like that. But anyway, so Bogart just whips out a cigarette, and he does a whole bit, right? He smokes, and you know, it becomes a prop at that point. But it was a much accepted prop at the time, right? And the cigarette manufacturers, of course, loved it. But yeah, so it's just one of those things, and so that I just said, listen, we can have smoking in our books, but it needs to be the villain, and you've got to show that they're hacking their lungs off, you know, and which we've done on occasion. So yeah, you know, it was like a personal thing. So, but thank you. Appreciate it. Yes, sir.
Two-part questions related, hopefully. Keep in mind, do you think digital has had the effect on the single issue market that maybe we thought it did? Keep in mind that Amazon kind of took the lead on digital. Related to that somewhat, what would you take? I've heard the idea that the single issue market is what's fading away in favor of trades and collectors. Do you think that's the case, or is the single issue, the physical single issue market still a strong node?
So in 2000, when I signed on to be editor-in-chief, one of the stipulations that I had a whole sheet of bullet points of things that that I met with Bill Jemis, our president, who made me the offer, that if we weren't going to attempt to achieve these things, I don't want the job, it doesn't matter who sits in the chair. One of these was to start a collected edition division, right? Marvel had no trade paperbacks in the market, you know? They may have had one or two collected editions in the market, right? Something like Secret Wars or something, but we had nothing else, right? We had this huge library of stuff, you know, 50, 60, 70-year-old stuff that was not being repurposed. I'm like, we're just literally leaving money just lying there. So we started doing this, and the fear was, man, okay, they got these collected editions, and then the other thing we did was, instead of, I think, at that point, DC and everybody else, DC had a phenomenal backlist, but DC also, I'm trying to remember what their timing was, but like if you finished a story arc, they wouldn't have the collected edition maybe for like 6 or 8 months down the road, right? To let the single issues breathe. We didn't do that. We started coming out with the collected editions right after a run was over. Maybe a month later, maybe 2 months later. Retailers were up in arms. This is going to kill the single issue, you know, and our belief was, no, it's actually going to help the single issue market, which it inevitably did, right? It ended up just increasing sales, because what also happens is we end up getting several different kinds of readers. One was the person who would just go to the bookstore and, oh, you know what, I have Ultimate Spider-Man Volume 1. I'm going to come back, is Volume 2 out? Well, it's not out yet, okay, so, and then they'll come back to the bookstore and they'll look for Volume 2 and eventually, right? And then you have your traditional weekly comic book reader, comes in every Wednesday, most Wednesdays, and they would look for their new issues. And sometimes those folks would be like, you know what, I like to collect my single issues and put them in a box. I'm just going to trade right here to read, right? So we found that it was an increase in all sides of this business. It's been the same thing with digital, right? It's a similar reader sometimes, but it's a very different reader as well. Bringing up my daughter again, I have tried to get my daughter to read digital comics or books. Can't do it, right? She's 22, right? So she grew up in a digital world where it was all there. She loves holding the book, right? So it has, I think if anything, I think the digital market has not exploded the way people thought it would explode, right? It helps reach a different kind of readership, but it is not overtaken everything in a lot of ways, because I think people still like to hold something. And comics have something that very few other mediums have, entertainment mediums have, which is we are an art form, we are literature, but we're also collectible. And by collectible can mean a lot of things, right? Some people collect them because they think they will resell them at some point. Maybe they will make some money or not. But in my case, and I think maybe a lot of people's cases, the collectible aspect of it is emotional, right? I don't have a long box full of thousands of books. I have a long box full of maybe 20 or 30 books. It's a very short box. But they're books that meant something to me at a particular time. Like the first comics my dad bought me, history books that were sort of significant to my career, right? And books that were just memorable. And when I read this book, it changed. I saw The Matrix, but it changed everything for me. So I think that collectability aspect is another really important part of it. You don't get that with digital, right? So I think it's a very wide market, and maybe people get the perception that comics are selling less because of the bifurcation of distribution right now, right? It used to be very easy to see, oh, this is the #1 book in the country, this is how much it sold, because it always going through Diamond. Now you got this bifurcation, and it's kind of like, it's like the streamers. You don't know what's the biggest streaming show in the world, because you're not getting, a simple Nielsen rating that tells you this is it, So, so the perception is clouded in a lot of ways. But again, I talk to publishers, and I talk to them about some numbers, and sort of really, really good numbers. Oh yeah, and by the way, then we got a book number, we got this, we got that. So there's profit being made all over the place. There's always publishers that are hurting, smaller publishers, depending on what what the year looks like. But we found, the hope was that digital would be the new newsstand. It would be the way for people to get comics anytime they want. And it's doing okay, but I don't think it's become the revolution that everybody thought it was. At least not yet. So, thanks, sir. Yes.
Hi, first, thanks for coming to Fan Expo. And I wanted to ask, what do you think the impact of AI will have on the comic book industry? And if possible, do you have an interesting story you could share about an interaction you had with either George Perez or Neil Adams?
Ooh, wow. Okay, so in terms of AI, don't panic. To me, it is the new buzzword. It's the new panic button that everybody's pressing, right? Back when 3D was a thing, right? It was going to replace everybody. There are so many hurdles that still need to be overcome with AI, but ultimately they're going to need artists to do it. There's so many copyright issues that are going to have to be dealt with AI that they may end up being really insurmountable at the end of the day. The other thing that this is where my red flags go out, right? So, who's the first? This is relatively recent, right? Like the last 6 months or so. Who was the first company to just sort of say, "We've got something amazing happening"? Was it ChatGPT? Were they the first one?
That was the one for one of them, but that was only for like text-based prompts. There are other. That was ChatGPT was more for text-based prompts,
Right.
not like art.
No, but I'm just saying in terms of like saying we've got this thing that can do this thing,
Yeah.
right? So let's just say it's ChatGPT for the sake of argument. I found it really interesting that the minute that first announcement got out there, and the minute that someone produced some sort of art with whatever AI program, suddenly every company that had AI or was working on AI was announcing we've got a breakthrough, literally in that week, right?
Yeah.
That to me sounds like a lot of people who aren't necessarily ready or have anything really substantial, but are looking for to catch up or say something because they have a lot of investors saying, "What are you guys doing? These folks have just announced something," right? So we had this influx of companies of saying, "We've got AI," right? I subscribed to ChatGPT. I had to see what this thing was about, right? It wasn't long before that suddenly ChatGPT, which could use Bing as a plugin. Suddenly Bing is no longer a plugin that's allowed with ChatGPT because the darn thing is pulling in copyright written material. And it's barely usable for anything as far as I'm concerned, right? In terms of art stuff, I just think there's going to be some huge problems. They're going to have some huge problems. I recently read an article. I can't tell you whether this is whether there's any veracity to this or not, right? But there could be an argument that if, let's say, a publishing company produces art through an AI program, that art itself cannot be copyrighted, right? That's a huge deterrent to a publishing company, right? If that artwork is just public domain from the minute it's created, could be a problem. The characters may not be public domain, but the artwork may be. So I would encourage artists not to panic, you can be good, vigilant. But I think, I've been around a long time and I've seen a lot of technologies come, stay, but none of them really can replace people. They've always been used as tools, right? So I use some 3D stuff in my work, right? I really enjoy the SketchUp 3D program because it gives you some basic shapes and perspectives that I can apply to my work and just speed me up a little bit. But I remember when that stuff was coming out, people were like, "Oh man, I don't need comic book artists anymore. It's over now." So that would be my first thoughts. I could be wholly wrong. Maybe I could be replaced tomorrow. Who knows? And in terms of, I'll tell you a Neil Adams story.
Okay.
So I met Neil many years ago. He was very, very pleasant. He gave me some great advice on doing thumbnails and my layouts. I used to do my layouts at printed page size, but Neil was doing his layouts literally at postage stamp size, right? And he explained his methodology to me, and so it was something that I ended up adapting to my work. But the coolest thing about Neil was when I got the job as editor-in-chief, I got a letter in the mail from Continuity Studios, from Neil Adams. And I opened it up, and in there was just a letter from Neil saying, "Attaboy, an artist has gotten this job. Way to go," right? And he sort of cheered me on, and then he started giving me advice. And like all of it was right. In particular, watch your weight and your health, which I did not heed. I put on a lot of weight. I lost a lot of it, but I put on a lot of weight. So anyway, I framed that and I put that up. Literally, it was in the front door of my apartment. As I walked in, boom, there's that letter from Neil Adams, with advice. But that was like awesome. And we were friends. We were really good friends. And it was a sad day when he passed away. But I keep in touch with his daughter as well. See how they're doing. But thank you.
Thank you.
What else? Really? All right, go.
I was going to ask if you have any interesting stories of Stan Lee.
Oh yeah, I mean, I got a lot of stories with Stan. Stan was a mentor. There's a great story if you subscribe to the Substack. One of my second or third newsletter is a whole big Stanley story about when I cold called Stanley one day to get some advice. But I'll tell you about the last time I saw Stan. Last time I saw Stan, once his wife Joni had passed away, Stan made it clear that was, for the most part, most of Stan's life went as planned. He had to kind of, jot it down exactly what he wanted to do, how he wanted to do it. What was not planned was him surviving longer than Joe. He was supposed to go, and Joe was supposed to take care of everything after he was gone. So her really kind of a time of death really kind of sucked the Stanley out. It was the first time that you could really see it was tough for him to move on. So those of us who do, we start to get, we start to hear that, he was winding down. So I had to go see him in LA. So I flew up to LA, and I went with my buddy Jim McLaughlin, who runs the Hero Initiative, and Jim was very close with Stan as well. And we both went to see Stan, and we got there, and he was sitting in a lounge chair, and he was looking at the pool and at the Hollywood Hills, and he was already, he lost his eyesight a long time ago. It was really hard for him to see. Stan used to, when he worked at a computer, he would, literally the type was like almost like the size of the screen, right? But he worked, he never stopped working. And at this point, he really started to lose his hearing. So, so Stan was, imagine Stan sitting here in his lounger, he's looking at the pool. My buddy Jim is standing right in front of him, and I'm standing a little bit to the right of him. And we know he can't see us, right? He's got the sunglasses on, but now he's got big headphones on to hear us, right? And the minute he knows, hey Stan, Joe and Jim are here to see you, right? He just like suddenly pops up, right? Stan, like, hey guys, how are you? Right? And we're having this great conversation with him. And Jim would ask him a question, and then Stan, hey Stan, how are you? I'm doing great, Jim. How are you doing? Doing great, Stan. Right? And we realized Stan had his headphones on backwards. So Jim looks at me, he's like, let's just roll with it. Just roll with it, right? And we had a great time. We had a great time with him, and he was still talking about Kirby and all the people he worked with, and how he couldn't have done it without him. And again, when I hear people get all up in arms right now about Jack Kirby created everything. It's like, Stan was the face of Marvel, right? He was the face of Marvel. He had that charisma, but he never in all the time I've known him, he's never said to me, well, you know, those guys get credit, it was all me. Never, ever, ever. I never heard him say anything. The only person I ever heard him finally, I never heard Stan say anything bad about somebody until I interviewed him at the Paley Center. And he was talking about his uncle-in-law, Martin Goodwin, or whatever. Martin Goodwin was the boss, right, well, in Timely Comics, who Stan worked for. And Stan was just like, he was a horrible person. I'm like, whoa, whoa, Stan, like, just threw Martin Goodman, who's been dead for like 100 years, under the bus. Right? It was the only time I heard Stan really say something disparaging about somebody. But I've always, you know, everybody knew that Martin Goodman was just like a, you know, not a nice dude. Sorry, Martin. So yeah, I mean, it was that's my one last memory of Stan, was just that he could still, what he did at Paley Center, it was like a 2-hour interview. We sold tickets, and it was for the Hero Initiative. And Stan had caught pneumonia 2 weeks prior, and had canceled the convention he had to go to. So we were certain he was canceling this thing, but he did not. He showed up. He was, you know, as lively as ever. And then when the show's done, his handler pulled me aside and said, "Just so you know, he did this for you. He did this for the Hero Foundation. He's got a collapse lung." Like, you know, he's like, it wasn't just a moment, you know. And you know, they just it was funny. His handler was just like, you know, just fed a lot of hamburger, right? He livened up the whole thing in his mind. You know, clearly had been, you know, and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, the guy was just amazing, and he knew how important it was for fans when they came to see him that he beat Stan Lee, right? Because on the side, you know, like behind the curtain before the show, before he gets on stage, he's sitting, he's chilling, he's, you know, he's just, you know, gets tired like the rest of us. When he steps on stage, the lights are on, you know. And people, they say that's because, oh, you know, he's just a hand, no, it's, yeah, part of it, but I think it's also because that's what folks want to see. They paid to see that. So he's going to give you that, you know, and it's as genuine as can be. So, yes. Yes.
So, you know, you talked about Stan Lee. He also made a lot of, you know, an appearance in Kevin Smith's films, as you have as well.
Yeah.
And, you know, so Kevin Smith had a revitalization of his career and everything. You know, do you have any stories about working with him, and are you going to be working with him again? Because he's done
With Kevin?
Yeah.
Well, I do tell a story in some stuff. I tell a story about my cameo in Chasing Amy. The other cameo, where I was the pizza guy, right? We were filming in LA, and my daughter was essentially a newborn at that point. And she took her first plane to LA, the whole thing. We brought her on set, and I just remember every time Kevin yelled action, she started bawling. And it just stopped. And every time Kevin, so we literally had to take the whole set. Like, it was so disturbing. But yeah, I had like a whole makeout scene with Elisha Dushka that didn't make the final cut. That was awkward for her. But yeah, I love Kevin. You know, we go back a long way. And I argue, you know, I have to argue. I think Kevin has done more for the comic book industry than anyone could even imagine. You know, when people talk about the success of Marvel Knights, people talk about the success of just, you know, the resurgence of comics after the speculative boom and bubble crash. Kevin is probably, to me, the single person responsible for bringing comic books back. Not just because he was writing on Daredevil, but also his preaching it, man. I mean, to this day, he is hardcore. You know, he loves his comic books, and I will love him forever for that. You know, because I don't think any of us would be in this room right now talking about comics if not Kevin. So, that's what you're having. Yeah.
Yeah, do you speak to any particular trends in comic books, whether it's style, artwork, storylines, or anything that are happening these days? Or
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, manga is influencing comics, right? I mean, it has been for a while, but it seems to be more and more, you know, and it's just what a lot of young artists, you know, like to read. I think, trend-wise, hard to say. I think what's really fun for me, right? Again, I've worked in the superhero genre for the majority of my life, but it's not what I live and breathe, right? It's not, you know, it's not. They're not the only kinds of movies that I watch or the TV shows that I watch. I like a lot of different things. So I think the thing that that really excites me the most about comics is the multitude of different genres, different kinds of stories that are being told today by people from all walks of life, just telling their stories, coming from sort of a true place, right? Because we can't just survive on any one single genre. I remember, again, 2000, you know, one of our goals was, you know, how do we get a larger female readership, right? There's women out there that are reading, right? They're reading novels, they're reading YA. How do we bring comics, right? And through a lot of trial and error, the industry itself has opened up and has created a fan base that is, you know, really strong female fan base, reading all kinds of things, including superheroes, which we didn't, at that time we thought, well, maybe, you know, it was myopic and maybe stupid. We were like, maybe we just don't read about superheroes. Clearly it's not true, right? Because they do, and they go to the movies. So, so we were happy about that. And then I think that more than anything, the fact that the audience is just such a wide swath of people is awesome. You know, and the fact is that the comics, you know, again, go back to 2000 and prior, comics lived in this sort of creative ghetto where people just thought of it as less than. I remember Neil Gaiman, paraphrasing, maybe I'm quoting exactly, I don't remember which one, but Neil Gaiman at one point had said in an interview that, you know, you could have a beautiful piece of art that you consider fine art, and you could have a beautiful story that's written and you consider great literature. But why is it that when we put the two together, the parts don't equal the sum of the whole, right? I think that was the most eloquent way to put it. What we do is, you know, what is, like anything, it's done with the greatest beautiful art form. And I think, much in the way that Japan, like, people just accept the fact that people read comic books and, you know, in public, you know, I remember the days everyone would read a comic book and we were hiding behind a novel, right? These days you can ride a subway in New York and just people openly reading graphic novels. That's awesome, right? So in the sense of trends, the fact that we are mainstream tells me all I need to know in terms of like the health of the industry and, you know, where we're going ultimately, you know.
Oh, okay. So I actually started reading comics when I was a kid, but that's you could say it's all my dad's fault because he had a collection.
Yeah.
So I got into superheroes that way. But I wanted to ask is what's your favorite storyline that you have no involvement in?
That I've had no involvement in?
Yeah.
Ooh, I've had a bunch. I just recently reread, and unfortunately it's out of print. But I've read it for a while. You probably get it in a second-hand bookshop. There was a book called Leave It to Chance by James Robinson, who is a very famous comic writer, and Paul Martin Smith, who is just a legendary illustrator. And Leave It to Chance came out 20-some odd years ago. It predates Potter and it predates Game of Thrones. And it might be I don't know if this is true or not, but it was YA before YA was like a hot thing to do, you know? And I love that book so much. The simple premise is that young Chase falconer is the daughter of, I forget her father's first name, his last name is Falconer. And they live in this small New England town that happens to be a focal point for fucked up magical shit that happens, monsters and stuff. If the monster's gonna come out of the ground, it comes out of there, right? So the Falconer family has been responsible for fighting these monsters and keeping them at bay and keeping the town safe, right? And every once in a while, some of these monsters will stick around. So for example, in the sewers of the town, there are giant monstrous gremlins. And the reason they're there is because when there was a gremlin attack many, many years ago, some people kept baby gremlins thinking they were cute, and they started growing, and so they flushed them down the toilet. But Chance is, in the book, she's 13, and she wants to, she's the next in line to do what she does, to do what her father does, to be the next great falconer, monster hunter. And her father tells her no, because she's a girl. That's not really why, but that's what he tells her, right? So she's like, and so she goes on these adventures, solving mysteries and solving crimes. A little bit of Nancy Drew in it too, and then you eventually find out, spoiler warning, you find out that he just didn't want to, had nothing to do with being a girl. He just didn't want any. He wanted to cut this off. It's just too dangerous for anybody, whether he had a son, a daughter, whatever, because he lost his wife, and it's a whole tragic thing. It's a beautiful story, and it's just. The drawing, it's drawn whimsically and beautiful. If you can find it somewhere, I recommend it highly. It's one of my all-time favorites. I've always, I've got my copies and I cherish them. And I look at it every once in a while and say, I wish I drew like Paulson. So, thank you. Sir.
Earlier we were talking about like your background, your background.
Yeah.
What do you think about like all the superheroes like movie, how they're all multicultural now? That's before it was like Captain America, more like what's your thoughts about the
I think it's great, as long as people are creating great characters, to be honest with you, as long as people are creating great characters that reflect our world, the more the merrier, you know what I mean? So I think it's fantastic. I often say that if I had one regret during my tenure, it's that being Hispanic, Cuban descent, we never really quite created during my tenure an iconic Latin character, right? But it's also the kind of thing where I didn't sit there and go, hey folks, we need a Latin character, right? The hope was, if it bubbles up, right? Because I think that if I were to sort of force the issue, it would be genuine, and I think the readership would know that, sort of forcing the issue, instead of just letting it come out of natural creative. 5 minutes, okay. It's coming out of the natural progression of the creative process. So the fact that, but we created a lot of different diverse characters and great characters at that time, right? I'm really happy about co-creating Echo with David Mack, right? Who not only was Native American but also was deaf as well, right? So, and I think that's the beauty of what we do, is the fact that we're able to do all this stuff, create this great character. So, really proud of what she's done. So, that's good. Sure.
Would you ever consider doing an academic conversation?
Scott W., who does those, good buddy of mine, he mentioned something. I feel awkward calling somebody and saying, hey, how about an academic version of my shit, right? If they ever want to do it, that'd be great. Awesome. So it's not a matter of, it's not for me to consider. It's really for them to consider, to think about whether, is this something they can make some money out of? So they have the license to do those. So, but if they ever wanted stuff, I got plenty of stuff. So, thank you.
All right.
Yeah. So, good.
Can you tell us a bit about what you're working on these days?
No. I didn't think we could. I have I have a policy I learned a long time ago. Before I was in comics, I was in the music business. A singer and a songwriter, and it's a whole other life. And I had become friends with this gentleman who was he was a manager for some, at the time, relatively popular acts. You know, he had managed Joe and Jed and some of the kind of acts out of the Long Island area. And we had gone to a bar restaurant, and we were sitting there chatting, and then he saw somebody at the bar, and he said, "Oh, Joe, excuse me." I was joking there. So, Joe, excuse me for a second. I gotta go talk to my friend over there at the bar. He goes to talk to the guy at the bar. The guy was clearly a musician, right? Heavy metal musician. He had the whole thing going on. And then he comes back and he says, "Joey, don't ever do that." Don't ever do what? He said, so I walked over to my buddy and I said, and the last time I saw him was a few months ago, and his band, according to him, his band was about to be signed by Elektra Capitol Records Union, right? We're talking 80s. So, so he said, "Yeah, we're about to be signed by so and so." That's fantastic, man. So I just asked him, "How's the deal going? How's Elektra?" And he said, "To the public." And so he said, "Don't ever do that again, Sal. What am I doing? Not doing?" He's like, "Don't ever talk about a thing until it's a thing." Because he's like, here's it, and he gave me his logic. He's like, "I'm in the music industry, so I know exactly when he says we're about to sign with them, that nothing is a thing until it's signed and delivered and done." So when he told me it fell through, I understand. But if he's just talking to a fan of their band in general, they walk away thinking, "Loser, didn't get signed," because they don't understand how the industry works, right? How things are so mercurial. He said, "So do yourself a favor. No matter how, until you sign on the dotted line, it's not a thing until it's a thing." So I've always had that policy, even at Marvel, it's not a thing until it's a thing. So I got a lot of things going on. Some of them are actual things, but until, again, putting on my marketing hat, it would be there's no point in me announcing, "Hey, I'm doing project X, but it's not coming out for another 12 months, because I say this here, then it might go on to the internet tomorrow, and fans are all excited to see it next week, but it ain't coming out for another, by the time it comes out 12 months from now, it is old news," especially in this sort of, ecosystem that we work in right now. It's just like, the internet just gets bored of things an hour after you announce it. So I'm very, very careful with that. But I do have some projects coming out, some actual physical comic books with sequential stuff in them. And this is a bigger announcement. So that, each one is sort of layered, and that's one of the reasons why I also started the Substack, was because I just wanted to start engaging with fans again, because I don't feel like I'm getting the engagement really out of Twitter or X or whatever the hell it's going to be called tomorrow, Facebook or anything. Instagram's not bad, but this is a place where I can really directly just sort of talk to folks and get feedback and have some fun. So I think Kevin's telling me our time is up unless somebody has a really urgent question. Any last one? No? Good? Thank you, folks. Really appreciate it.